the screen, the arena lights went down in the arena, and one Kenny Omega appears on the screen, talking about how he's come to save the promotion. The crowds got smaller, they got quiet. He's here to change all of that.
The real virus is
Is
Will.
Will, yes. And you said, when New Japan called him, he was surprised and he's not interested, but in the good for pro wrestling and to save this promotion, he's gonna do it. He's going to wrestle Will Ospreay January 4th for the IWGP US title. And we had a lot of questions about this match in this segment. I'm just going to run through these questions and we can just kind of have a discussion about this. So Craigie D said, who should Ospreay lose the US title to? Viking Pain says, I know you guys are Kenny Omega fans, but Will Ospreay should not be losing to another outsider like him. If Gato feeds the best wrestler in the world who's signed to the company and not even 30 to 40-year-old Kenny Omega, who's not even part of the company anymore, I'm done with New Japan. Les Commission 7252 says, do you think that the match between Omega and Ospreay will be the same level of attraction a few years ago between Jericho and Omega? The suspension of the Elite stall a feud, but with the return of Omega back to Japan and having his first match back in the Tokyo Dome in over 3 years, this feels like the biggest attraction at Wrestle Kingdom ever since Alpha and Omega. And with Chris Charlton acknowledging that Omega versus Ospreay might as well be the main event, do you guys think that it's right for New Japan to hold a vote for the fans to see who would represent the main event at Wrestle Kingdom? Adam says there were lots of hints throughout the show. They'll be cheering in the Dome next year, from Kevin Kelly on the commentary to Kenny saying it wasn't because of the pandemic that people weren't cheering. What do you think the odds are that we get cheering? I'm 6 for 10 right now. Rambo and Slam Pig says, what's the chance that any other match can top what Ospreay and Kenny are about to unleash on us at the Dome? It's a world title match going on after them, a mistake given the relative coldness of that program. And the Dark Soldier says, even though it's disrespectful to the world title, should Wrestle Kingdom main event with the US title match? It already feels hotter than the world title match and more fresh. Though I want Okada and Jay to have a great match, Omega and Ospreay feels more special and more like a main event.
It's a lot of questions saying the same thing.
Yes.
All hail Caesar's home. Kenny returning to the Dome.
The only thing I thought when I listened to this was, Kenny was telling Will that there was no real virus, that the real virus was Will Ospreay. I mean, it sounds a little bit, deniery of Kenny, you know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, obviously, like the whole promo was saying that, like, the crowds were quiet, and he goes like, well, people say it was a pandemic, but it wasn't really. It was like, yeah, it was a pandemic. They have masks on. It's illegal for them to talk. What are you talking about, Kenny? Like, he's just being a dick. It is great because, like,
that's
Kenny Omega's at his best when he is a smug dick to a Japanese audience. So yeah, that's how it works.
They broke the law though that day when that video came on.
They sound like they love him.
They broke the law when they broke the law when what's name broke out the One Wing Angel in the Grand Prix. I do this now where, like, I interchange like Grand Prix and G1 now, depending on whichever one I'm not talking about now. But anyway, like when they did the Ospreay and Okada final, when he hit the One Wing Angel, like the crowd broke the law then too. Like it's a thing.
Man, it's fitting that on the week of, we make our return, or I make my return to Keeping It Strong Style. Kenny Omega shows back up in New Japan. What fortuitous timing here. I welcome the pure elitists to get upset about Kenny Omega coming back to the Dome. I welcome all the old memories of bitterness and anger and resentment for the Best Bout Machine, a Hall of Famer. I'm reading this question from Viking Pain. Shout out to him. It was pretty interesting. I think these are some things you should consider, right? Because he's, the last thing he wrapped it up with was he's going to be done with New Japan if Kenny wins, right? He said, Will's not even 30 yet. I believe Will's 29. He said 40-year-old Kenny, I believe Kenny's 39. Kenny, a man that has not displayed any signs of like aging or falling off or anything like that. So I don't think age is the argument that you might want to make there. I would consider, if you're thinking about Will Ospreay New Japan Pro Wrestling, the partnership with AEW, there are a lot worse things that can happen than Kenny Omega winning the first match. If that's gonna like send you off, like consider this. If you're you would be asking for a big favor in that case, right? And let's keep it a buck. The company with the upper hand here is AEW. Between New Japan and AEW, they're doing them a solid by giving Kenny them that day. Now, if you're giving a clean job, say, all right, we do the clean job for Kenny Omega. What do you think is AEW is going to ask for in return? And down the road, it can be bigger than that. Like, could they hand Kenny back the IWGP Championship? Like, these are the things like you have to consider. Like when you're saying like,
well, if they put it on Jay White, why couldn't they put it on Kenny Omega again?
So
right.
I would be, I wouldn't marry yourself to the idea of like, unless you're, just really done with it, that's your prerogative, right? But if this is a true working relationship,
if you want to be done with it over that, then you may as well just be done with it now, because like there ain't that much that's holding you. To be honest, if this is what breaks your back, to be honest with you, you might as well just go on your journey without New Japan Pro Wrestling. If like this one thing is what ends it for you.
Yeah,
this isn't Goldberg being shocked with the fucking cattle prod. Relax.
I think part of the idea is that like if Will Ospreay loses, and then doesn't get his win back or something, it's some sort of injustice,
There's no way that they're doing this series and Will Ospreay doesn't beat him at some point.
Exactly, and I think that
Kenny Omega wouldn't do it that way.
No, I agree, and I think people are sort of missing the point that if he does lose here, he's going to get the favor returned, basically.
Yeah.
The other question I have about it is, okay, I know some people feel some sort of way about both of these guys, just depending on where they stand in their fandom. But what if at the end of the day, this ends up being the greatest match in the history of wrestling? Because
then they'll lie.
Huh?
Then they'll just lie and say it wasn't. You know how this goes.
Yeah, they hate both of these guys. Like they hate everything about Kenny, and they hate everything about Will, because Will's really the next Kenny. And all throughout this thing in the promo, Kenny told the truth. It was never Jay White. Jay White's about to get sent out there after them, and poor Kazuchika Okada that has to follow this. Jay White, the real replacement, was always Will Ospreay. Will Ospreay's the one everyone has been afraid of for years, just like they were afraid of Kenny. They never were in fear of Jay White like that. Like, why? Because Ospreay has the same juice about pushing wrestling forward that Kenny had, and they don't like that shit, and it burns them up. And when these boys smoke the dome, I'm gonna laugh. I'm gonna watch them lie. I'm gonna watch them scramble, and I'm gonna watch them cap, and then we gonna watch the star ratings that come in.
Yeah, I mean, this match is going to be nothing less but incredible. As far as whether or not it should main event or not, I mean, it's very tough. Obviously, it's in Japan, and it's going to be very hard to put two foreigners in the main event of the biggest show of the year. But however, like a lot of people mentioned, this does feel like a big attraction. It feels bigger than the main event. You had your English commentary team saying this is bigger than any title match that you can get. So it feels bigger than anything that's really happening right now in New Japan.
I mean, it wouldn't be if like Jay White wasn't a champion, but they made Jay White the champion. That was their mistake.
I mean, I still think it would still feel pretty big regardless who the champion was. But I mean, yes, with the Jay White as champion and just how cold this Jay White Okada program has been, we've been talking about it the last several weeks now. I mean, they really haven't done much to really heat it up. They're doing it by the numbers, road to multi-man matchups, and because there were no briefcase defenses, there was only one Jay White title defense this fall. They've been dragging this cut and paste road to formula on since the G1s ended. We'll get all these multi-man matches. There's been like no pull aparts, no brutal attacks, no scathing promos,
no stipulation or anything like.
Yeah, nothing. It's just straight up Jay Okada, which is going to be a great match. Those guys have great matches together, but it just feels there's like no buzz or anything intriguing about it.
And this is a
So-
direct rematch of 6 months ago. So like that's like
Right.
also something else working. There's a lot
Right,
of work
with a
being
with a
missed.
return with a back-to-back G1 winner. So was it last night I was talking about this Richard night before? I was talking about like last night. We were like, okay, so if they're doing this Okada program, it's probably in line with like what we all thought it was going to be like after after Ospreay beat Naito in the semifinal of the G1 at Budokan Hall. Where it's like, okay, they AEW and New Japan seem to be setting up for him to have like this like championship run, like all-time thing where they're putting together like you're gonna have a program with Okada, you're gonna have a program with Omega, and it's set for you to probably beat both of them and be the IWGP Heavyweight Champion, World Heavyweight Champion, whatever they call it now. So if that is the case, Okada, obviously, Ospreay has to win the G1 next year because he came this close to winning it this year.
Yeah.
And if he does that, who does he have to face at Wrestle Kingdom 2 years from now? Or 380 something days from now, 390 some days from now. Has to be Okada. So if that's the case, doesn't that mean Okada's about to get the belt right back from Jay White more likely than not? So why do we even if that's the case, why do we put the belt on Jay White to begin with? Before we went to the G1.
Something to do.
And that's how you end up with this situation where like Omega comes in with Ospreay, and you're like, shit, most people won't look at this as main event.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I fully agree with the projections of what's going to happen long term with the Ospreay and Okada stuff, but yeah, I mean,
He has to beat him at some point.
no, he does. I just don't know if it's going to happen with that exact scenario or whatever.
Okay,
But,
that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. When it comes to that match in particular, it's just, yeah, it's pretty cold. I think they took the title off Okada just so he could win it back. You know,
Do you think they should just win with Naito instead?
Huh?
Do you think they should just win with Naito winning G1 this year instead?
I think Naito should have just. I think Naito should have beat Jay White for the title in the lead up to this match.
Okay.
But I mean, I guess putting all that aside, I'm excited that we're getting Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega, and I feel like that's sort of lost in the discourse of all this. You know,
because it's
all
already
these
started.
There's so many other things that people are talking about, and arguments, you know, all that stuff, and it's just kind of stupid.
I just think maybe it's from my perspective. It was like I think this match is one of the matches I like think of most of, like the match that I most want to see between two people that have like never had like some big stakes match together or big high profile match together. He's probably one of the first handful of people I put together in a matchup in that situation, and then like from there is like, so yeah, like I'm with it. There's nothing we really further discuss. And I'm thinking like, all right, so like what else is like seems to be what's more interesting to me? What interesting is like, how do we end up with Okada and Jay White being the presumed title match or whatever else? Like why did they think this was going to be like, you know, at the time when they really need to sell tickets, why did they think this was going to be the thing that was going to put them over the top? I guess maybe that's, you know, it's unfair to like connect it that way, but like once I see that match, I'm like, all right, what's the main event? Oh, that's the main event. And then I get to those questions. That's all.
Yeah, and maybe it's the thing where the Omega Ospreay thing didn't come together maybe until later, and the plans were always Jay White Okada, and then they got handed this gem of a matchup.
I mean, there was definitely times where they thought it was going to be off because of what happened with CM Punk, or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
So yeah, that's definitely a play.
It's going to be interesting because they've already done pretty well on tickets, you know, relatively speaking already. It's going to be interesting to see if they get an increase or a bump from this match in particular. It'll kind of tell a lot about the drawing ability of this particular matchup, you know?
Yeah, and they're pushing international ticket sales really hard. They created this whole little package you can do where
It ends on Monday, right?
Yeah, you get meet and greets. You get to have like lunch with Kevin Kelly and Chris Charlton and go New Year's Dash and Wrestle Kingdom. So there's this whole package New Japan's doing for international tickets, and they're definitely trying to get more, you know, Westerners and international fans over. for that show, and one night show, and yeah, they're throwing a lot of big guns here, and I think like Josh mentioned, ticket sales are already surpassing some of the pandemic domes, and so it's going to be kind of back to the old school, one night show with a great crowd.
Yeah, I would be interested if they I'm not saying it needs to go to a vote, but if they did put it to a vote, I would be
It'd be hilarious.
I would be interested in the results.
I would too. But I mean, also, I think it might not be the same exact feeling for the domestic audience as it is for like the Western fans,
What that was Wrestle Kingdom 8, right?
Yeah.
What beat Naito and Okada? What was it? I forgot. Tanahashi and who? Nakamura?
Nakamura.
That's what it was. Okay, yeah.
I'm trying to see. I don't see any other match that's topping them. Rambones. I don't think it's a mistake
On that show?
Yeah, on that show.
No.
No.
The world title going on last. I think the world title should go on last. But that's on them. We know what the real main event is.
I mean, that used to be the Kenny Omega world title.
Yeah, that Kenny's winning back the Kenny Omega world title. I would be very happy about that. But yeah, man, I think Ospreay and Omega are like two of the most gifted and phenomenal wrestlers I've ever seen in my life. There's a really cool story between them as far as a lot of time in sports, like greats of that just miss each other, right? We never got to see LeBron and Kobe in the finals or something like that. Like it's like ships passing in the night, and the fact we're getting this, and like Kenny's come back off an injury looking like as close to his peak as he's ever been, and we know what kind of run Will is on. I would just tell people to enjoy like the fact that this is even fucking happening, because this is like this is top level shit. Like this is top level shit. Like this is like there's so much when you really break it down like that you can think about narratively that lines up with this. And their promos are really heated. They've been working on this thing for a while, and I'm sure both guys want to prove something to themselves, to everyone else, and I'm sure they have like we know like what Kenny was telling Will when Kenny left New Japan, like the responsibility he gave him. He didn't go up to anybody else and say, this is your shit now. So like, I'm sure there's a lot of respect between those guys. I think is going to be cool to see play out in the ring.
There was also that sort of dream match essence to it, similar to what we saw when Jericho did the same thing to Kenny Omega. Mm-hmm. And if this match had happened in any other time in their careers, it just wouldn't be what it is today, which, it's kind of crescendoing where both guys are at this, top level, not just from a performance standpoint, but also character wise, and they're at their hottest. So this happening now is like, from that standpoint, like this is the perfect time to do a big dream match like this. And yeah, I think we might literally see one of the greatest matches that has ever happened. I feel like that baby. Confidently.
Devil Sky, baby. Let's go.
And for people who are worried about Ospreay losing, I mean, post match he's cutting a promo saying, he needs to bring back the assassin. You haven't seen the aerial assassin in a while. To me, that screams Naito trying to bring back Stardust Genius and failing. So this could be Ospreay thinking he needs to do something, be the aerial assassin to try and meet Omega, and then that costs him and he loses. And so then he learns, like, all right, maybe I don't need to go back to the past. I need to be Will Ospreay today to beat Omega, and you get the rematch, and he beats him then. So there's a lot of story elements that could lead to Ospreay losing. And I think it would be fine because he's going to get the win back. They're going to do a story. It will be compelling.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure we'll be talking about this more as we, build to Wrestle Kingdom 17. Let's talk about this